Good morning to those that are on the call this morning. There's just a small number of us so far, but we appreciate y'all being here. If you would hop into chat and let us know who you are and what entity you're with, that would be great. Tim and I are excited to be here. Hopefully, if you were on last week's call, this is going to be a little easier for you to hear us and understand, see the slide deck. We apologize for the technical difficulties. We're on a different platform this week, so that should eliminate the issues that we had previously. So Tim Slivko with City of Southlake, I so appreciate you joining me again.
Absolutely.
Tim is on top of what's happening in the additional sessions that are going on, so he'll have a little bit of information for you. They're going to have some additional sessions, the different organizations, both in September and October, to make sure everybody is completely versed and we know what's going on and what our parameters are. So we've got DART, terrific. We've got shirts and Cibolo University City ISD. So you're down in my neck of the woods. I'm down here in the Hill Country. DART, you're up by Tim up in South Lake. So excuse me, we're going to jump right in because we've got quite a bit to cover in the time that we've got allotted. I wanted to say hi and wave and show you my smiling happy face this morning, but I am going to stop streaming my video to ensure that we don't have any bandwidth issues. I live out in the country, so I want to make sure we are solid. I've done a couple of classes from here, so we shouldn't have any issues with it. So when it comes to questions, feel free to put anything in the chat. If we're not seeing it for some reason, we're going to be monitoring it, but feel free to unmute, throw out a question. That's what we're here for. That being said, we are going to dive right in. I want to be sure if you're not seeing a slide that says the 89th Legislative Session 2025 update brought to you by TechShare, unmute and let me know because you should be seeing that. Okay, so we're going to jump into the one I think's of the most interest to people, which is Senate Bill 1173, which is our procurement threshold increase. It raises the formal bid limit, which is currently $50,000 to $100,000. It's just going to allow us to meet needs faster, right, for our service delivery. Gives us more flexibility with procurement and keeping things moving. My goodness, excuse me. Lost my voice. When I started, I did share with the team last week, when I started public procurement for the state of Texas, the bid limit was 15,000. So Tim, it was what, 25 when you started?
Yep. Yeah, 25 for me, but when I started here at the city, I had a $250 quote threshold I had to meet. So it was even worse.
Yeah. So one of the things that I have received some questions on, several questions through just my own channels, plus through the TechShare helpline, the Procurement Lifeline that we answer questions as they come in, was my government and entity does not want to raise the limits. So what I've included with this morning's session are just some ideas of how to work with our management if management doesn't want to raise the limit for approvals, or our governing bodies that we'll walk through. This is something I did with the city of Plano when I worked for them pre-COVID. We raised our council approval limit from 50 to 100. So still followed all competitive bid laws over 50. However, moved the approvals to council to 100,000. I do want to make a quick caveat on the raise to 100K. So your hub, the requirement is to search for hubs up to 100,000 from 3,000. It remained at 3,000, but that increases from 50 to 100 as well. Okay. So when we talk about the procurement threshold and why raise the limit, talking about what actually changes, looking at what your local ordinance. So For in my case, the local ordinance, we were raising to 100, but now the statute's at 100. But if you want to be higher than that, you can go through an ordinance change. The city of Garland has done that, and they are actually at 250,000. We will still require competitive bids above 100,000. So we're going to just shift all of our processes to 100K unless an exemption applies. We'll still get below 100. So if they're saying, hey, we want to see everything over 50 and ensure that you're still following requirements and you're still doing best practices to get quotes. Just, part of the policy would be we're raising them to 100, but we're still going to use quotes and best value pricing and follow all internal controls and documentation standards. Talking about the hub laws remaining in effect from 3,000 up to 100. There's no change to ethical rules, conflicts, or audit requirements with this change. So why do we want to get them to increase their approval? Why do we want to say, hey, we don't necessarily need to see everything at 50, right? We're just going to streamline our contract approval processes, expediting routine, non-controversial purchases. Earlier bid windows, hopefully will gain us better pricing and less price escalation risk, right? So if our contractors now know up to 100K, we can get a purchase order almost right away once the decision's been made versus having to wait to go through the agenda process, get on council. Some city secretaries, mine could be as long as, 6-7 weeks from when we make it a decision who to award to when it would actually get to council. This takes all that out. Contractors like that. When they do their bids, there's a high potential that they're thinking, hey, this is going to take longer to approve, so I need to do some risk mitigation and maybe bid a little bit higher. So we think that we would see some increased service delivery and better pricing. So getting to bid earlier, eliminating some double work. So if we get to bid earlier, don't do the formal process and have to go to council. These were just some examples of in my entity that I gave to council to say, these are things that we would have gotten to service faster: screening wall replacements, alley construction, updating our fleet faster, eliminating and minimizing service delivery disruption. So just trying to show them the business sense of going ahead and upping their approvals to 100,000. We recommended just to quell any concerns they had, we would still present them any items of public interest, anything that would require a policy decision, or if we had any sort of a protest or concern about who was being awarded the contract, we would still take that to council for approval. So again, kind of curtailing any concerns that they might have. Transparency would still be in place. Again, that no loss of transparency. I offered to provide quarterly, could do a monthly report. We landed on quarterly for what council didn't see from 50 to 100 until they got comfortable with it. We posted annual contracts on the website from 50 to 100. Public council and staff will have access to all the same information, so that ensures that transparency. So we're gaining efficiency without sacrificing openness or accountability. I gave them a statistical impact of the percentage of dollar amounts approved. So, and what they would continue to see. So they would have seen in these previous fiscal years, they still would have seen if it was raised to 100K during those fiscal years, they still would have seen 96 to 97.5% of all money that was being spent. So they were still seeing almost everything anyway when it came to a dollar amount. I gave them some historical data just to put their minds at ease and also to drive home the importance of service delivery, showing, hey, this is where our population was in 07 and 2020. These are the number of procurements that were processed. This is where our procurement spend. So we're doing an awful lot. The more streamlined we can be and efficient we can be, the better our processes are, the better our service delivery. I really honed in on service delivery improvements for our citizens. I just gave them a history of our ordinances. This isn't anything we have to go through. This is just for your information. If you find yourself in a position where you need to do a presentation or a slide deck for your council or governing bodies to increase that approval from 50 to 100. This is what some of our surrounding entities are doing. Most of this is back from the COVID era and what they were doing. Garland raised it after that. It was 100 when I presented to my council. It's now 250. I went ahead and updated that because I know that's happened, and that's a big dollar. It's a big number. We created an FAQ to let them know, hey, we're not reducing transparency, we're not weakening competition. I use this internally as well for my management team to then share with their team so that they understood what was and wasn't really changing in the process. It was business as usual for us. Directors remained, their authority remained the same. It did not increase. So in this case, you may or may not. I do know several entities have decided they're not raising their director thresholds to 100K. Only the city manager and his designee or their designee, which might be an assistant city manager or a director in their absence, or it could revert back to the mayor. So depending on your individual entity. So we just created an FAQ just to make it clear everybody was getting the same message. So I want to stop there for just a second before we go into the next bill. Does anybody, I went through that a little bit quickly. And again, you'll have copies of this so you can take a look at those slides. But any question on that change or on getting governmental bodies to increase their approval to 100K? Any questions or thoughts?
One of the things that we didn't cover was that the cost for the ads in the newspapers can also be
Yes.
reduced with this. So, we don't have to advertise now until 100,000, which will be a help as well.
Yeah, it'll be a big help. Yeah, so that's for us. Yeah, that's true. That the not having those ads, and you can typically show them what that looks like as well from the standpoint of a dollar savings. You can get that from your finance department typically. So that's a great point. Thanks, Tim. All right, 210. Tim, you want to take 210?
210 is school contracting conflicts. The intent of this bill was, from the author of the bill, it says, in recent years, concerns have grown over potential conflicts of interest in the procurement practice of school districts. So school districts seem to be causing some issues that our Texas legislature thought they needed to address. Part of it was school board members or their relatives holding financial interest in vendors where they're also the ones in charge of awarding contracts and such. So this is, they have to disclose this, and there is a criminal offense if there's any type of issues with this now going forward. The board member may not have a substantial interest in a vendor, be related to a vendor, or have received or been promised a gift or in-kind services with a value of more than $250. So, and then they define substantial interest. So it's trying to lock down some of the school boards.
Okay, and this goes into effect on 9/1.
Correct, I believe.
About a week.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Education Code 11 and effective 9/1. Thanks. Perfect. So this gets into this. Tim mentioned that there were criminal offenses. This is what it looks like. So similar to some other things that we see when the statute has a criminal offense associated with it. So lobbying contract, the House Bill 223 came about because concerns were raised about the lack of transparency and competition and how lobbying contracts were actually awarded. In many cases, they stated that cities can spend tens or even hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to hire lobbyists without any formal bid process, public input, or accountability. So this was requiring ensuring a greater oversight of competition and fiscal responsibility. So it ends the exemption for competitive bidding on lobbying and government relations services. So it was typically often put under professional services, and a lot of entities wouldn't go through a process. It is specifically not allowed to be done that way anymore. This one goes into effect. This is for cities, local government code 252, and goes into effect on 9/1. And then Tim, there is something that it might impact this as well in the current session?
Yeah, in the first special session and now in this second special session, they're going after any of the lobbying, and I don't want to call them lobbying, I'm going to call them advocating or advocacy groups that advocate for trying to stop bad bills from going through that are going to impact the local governments. And what we've got out there right now, the House had probably 5 or 6 bills. The Senate has one right now for not allowing taxpayer dollars to be spent with these associations or these lobbyists. That's been around the last 2 or 3 sessions. They've been trying to get this for a while. There seems to be a big push for it this year because the governor added that to his proclamation that he wanted that addressed in the special sessions. So will it get passed? I don't know. The Senate's already passed Senate Bill 13 from the special second session. I haven't seen anything on the House yet, but it could be going into place. So TML, TAC, TASBO, any of those could be affected by this.
Okay. House Bill 718 came out, and it's housing contracts with liens. It prohibits partnerships for student housings with entities having payment claims or liens. The bill author came forward and said, hey, there's bad actors among student housing development who have a failure to pay at the end of a project is their standard practice. And they're bolstered by the fact that institutions are in such desperate need of housing, and that the revenue from the project will not be impacted once the certificate of occupancy is received. So what they were finding was that not everybody was getting paid what they were supposed to be paid. And essentially, the institution of higher education was, encouraging unknowingly that not everybody was being paid for services rendered based on the way that the CO would come in and the fact that they weren't paying their subcontractors. So this says that they can no longer do that, this statute. It targets that no payment claim against contractors specific in student housing construction, and it exempts entities with valid payment bonds covering such claims. So this is something that hits Education Code 51, and it also goes into effect on 9/1 of this year. $1261 on unclaimed property notices. It allows, this gets into the Code of Criminal Procedure, and it's no longer, having everything in the newspaper is no longer the best place to reach people anymore. So this seeks to alleviate that specifically for law enforcement notices. So they can now do that via agency websites and social media versus having to put it in the newspaper, have those fees associated with it. Its intent is to modernize outdated print-only requirements. And then, of course, it improves efficiency for law enforcement. I know Tim's worked on trying to get those requirements for us removed to have to put in the newspaper. We haven't had a lot of luck, but this might give us some legs in future sessions to remove that requirement for local governments.
Absolutely. I think this is a good start. It's got them thinking about, how all of us already know that we're not getting any return on investment by putting our procurement advertisements in the newspaper. All of us, or the majority of us, have city websites that can post it, or we're doing electronic bidding right now. So we're getting it out more directed to the people that are going to reply to our solicitations versus just throwing an ad in the newspaper anymore. So hopefully this is a good first step, and we can push next time to try and get further on that and get more more legs on the newspaper and for the procurement portion of it.
Okay, great. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Been trying to do that since the early 2000s.
Yeah, been a while.
Yep. So House Bill 1500 basically just says we're going to continue to offer DIR as a resource to entities. Well, I didn't know that DIR had to be reviewed and reinstated, so to speak, to continue to function. So this was new for me. This particular bill, 1500, gives them 12 more years to perform the duties that they're currently performing. And they also recommended as part of this that DIR provide more training and assistance to other agencies with their own IT procurements. And a lot of that's going to be specific to state agencies, but we know that they trickle down and that they're a resource for local government as well. So that's what House Bill 1500 does. I can share that in addition to DIR being a resource for technology products, TechShare also has some new contracts in place specific to DBITS contracts, as well as some AI consultancy and solution contracts. So that's another route for you as well for getting your IT needs met. Let's see, 1851. Tim, you want to take that one?
Yeah, this relates to school districts now being able to receive any surplus law enforcement vehicles from the Texas Facilities Commission. They, in the past, and I was unaware of this, they in the past were not able to request or accept vehicles from them. Now they can. I know municipalities can already, counties can already. If I'm not mistaken, special districts can. So I think the school districts were one of the last ones that couldn't. So that goes into effect on 9/1 as well. There's a requirement that they have to maintain and have to retain the vehicle at least until the second anniversary of the date the property is received. So, they couldn't auction it off, or they couldn't get rid of it for realistically 2 years then. But then after that, it doesn't look like there's any other requirements to dispose of it then, so it could go through your regular auction process then. But that's something new to help them, and I'm thinking it's a big push for the school resource officers to be able to put them into some vehicles at a much lower cost.
Absolutely. Okay. House Bill 1922 goes towards the construction claim accrual process. So the thought when the author put this in was the right to repair statute was designed to provide a clear and fair process for contractors to address construction defects before litigation. There was an ambiguity in the accrual date for defect claims, so it was applied inconsistently by different entities and across the board. So this is an attempt to fix that and reduce that ambiguity. And essentially the clock starts when the report is postmarked to the contractor, not when the underlying event actually happened. So this will give some consistency, especially if we end up in litigation on anything. This goes to Government Code 2272, also effective on 9/1 of this year. 2960 on venue. This relates to the choice of law and stating that venue must be in Texas County where the property is located. And it restricts out-of-state or unfair venue clauses. So we often have where we go back and forth, maybe not on construction, but just overarchingly in procurement. Sometimes we get that, you know, especially if we're using their standard contracts, which we don't ever recommend in construction, where it will have the venue at your contractor's state and county. So this is saying for construction contracts, the venue cannot be outside of your venue, your area, your immediate area. This comes from the Business and Commerce Code, and it's effective on 9/1/2025 too, as well.
One of the things that was brought up on this one as well, Diane, from earlier was that it states that it's the county where the property is located. And one of the points that was brought up, I know South Lake is in 2 counties. We had one person from the class last week that was in 3 counties.
3 counties,
So
yeah.
yeah, you have to be, it's based on where the property is located. So, you may have to change even internally, which venue you're going to use depending on where the property is.
Correct. That's a great point. Thanks for reminding me of that. So you have to definitely make sure we're looking at that. We have a question. House Bill 2960, does this apply to contracts already in place or only new contracts? And I believe it's new.
I think everything would be a new contract. I don't see a intent or anything, but that's something that we can follow up on.
Yes.
But
yeah.
Normally it's going to be going forward with this type of stuff, and it wouldn't go backwards. Things prior would probably be grandfathered, but that could be a question for your attorneys, and that's probably a good time here, Diane, to give that disclaimer if you would.
Yeah, we are not attorneys. I have not gone to law school. Tim has not gone to law school. I do not stay at Holiday Inns when I travel, so I am not smarter at the end of the day when it comes to statute. So yes, this is meant for guidance. We definitely, if you're hearing something in what we're talking about this morning, you say, hey, I think that impacts me. You want to definitely make sure that you're going back to your attorneys to say, hey, this is what I heard. This is what I'm thinking. How are we going to implement this? Right. You want to make sure you're having that conversation with them. We just want to make sure that you're seeing what's out there and impacting us. But as far as establishing your policies and procedures and how you're going to execute that, we definitely want you working with your management and your attorneys on that. And we'll do some research. I think it would be hard for this one to be retroactive since you've already got people working on the site. I think this would be a tough one to make retroactive, but we'll take a look at it.
I am actually doing that right now. So
okay, perfect. So House Bill 3005 refers to payment disputes and audits. The bill author came forward saying that ongoing audits of certain public work construction projects are actually counter to the Texas Prompt Payment Act, essentially negating the payments agreed upon under contract by delaying the release of retainage already earned and making contractors act as financiers of public projects. So it's clarifying that audits on a construction project for public works are still subject to the Prompt Payment Act, And unless it's been excluded from a bona fide and good faith dispute, an audit that continues for more than 60 days after the project's substantial completion. So it means that an audit can't be used not to pay them. Okay, so apparently that was going on in enough entities that the author and sponsor of the bill thought it was important to Tim, okay, it thought it was important to address in a statute that you cannot circumvent the Prompt Payment Act because you have an audit.
Right.
Okay, and Tim, what do you have there?
I just confirmed, I went and looked at the bill that was enrolled and it says that it's going forward. So as of 9/1, anything after that, it applies to. So
So it
previous
does say
contracts, it
renewed
doesn't.
though. It does say renewed, not just is entered into or
yeah.
renewed.
Yeah, it does
All
say
right.
renewed, but you probably wouldn't be renewing a construction contract though, would you? It would be the original contract.
Well, it depends, because some folks may
Okay.
have contracts where we talk about vertical construction versus horizontal,
Okay.
right? If they're calling street repairs, brick screening wall repairs as construction, you might want to work with your legal and see does this apply or not to it. I could see some folks I work with that their legal would say this would apply to that, and if it's a renewal, then they have to go in and change that venue. So
Yeah.
again, that's
And
something you need to address with your legal.
yeah, and I just saw the chat from Jennifer. I was just
Yep.
gonna kind of state that if there's any kind of modification, it does not have modification in the bill, but I'll bet you the intent of that was to include that as well. But again, that's going to be conversation with your legal, see what they're comfortable with.
Absolutely, yeah. See, that's where there's those unintended consequences where the bill doesn't always think about our world in procurement and how it's going to impact, and
Yeah.
then answering all the questions for us. So that's where we have to definitely partner with each other and our legal departments at the end of the day, right? To make sure we're doing what we need to be doing.
Right.
Solid waste contract protections. What this does is it protects if you don't currently have a contract in place and it's being provided by a private entity for your solid waste collections, and you're going to then you've decided to make it a city or entity service. This gives some protections to the companies that are currently providing those services and allows for a transitional period, especially when exclusivity changes. So it's overarchingly, it changes the exclusive contracts for solid waste. So if you have somebody, if you get to an entity and they say, hey, we want to take on solid waste, and I do know of a couple of entities that have done this in the last couple of years, or they've done recycling as well, but specific to solid waste. Hey, we want to take this over for our citizens. Then they have to consider this bill in order to keep the current contractor somewhat whole during the transition process. And we have, here's a little bit more information about how that transition period works. So if it has an existing non-exclusive contract, they can keep serving after notice is published until the contract expires, or 1 year after the notice, whichever one comes first. And if they're providing it with no contract in place, they have up to 60 days after notice that they can remain on site doing that work. You want to talk cybersecurity, Tim?
Sure. Let's see. That's 5331. Let's see, relating to content of certain contracts entered into by governmental entities. part of what the author and the sponsor intended was current state law requires the state agency and local government cyber attacks to be reported to DIR within 48 hours of discovery. There was some insurance policies that contained clauses to restrict that disclosure, and this now invalidates insurance contract clauses that would restrict that reporting. So it ensures that the agencies can report a cyber attack within the required time frame. And then it also helps to support the transparency and the legal compliance with what's already in place. See if there was, and that I didn't, that one's effective immediately. So that's one of the ones that, they put into place right away. And actually that, waste management services is also effective immediately. So those are already in place right now. So I don't know that, I haven't heard of anybody having trouble with reporting it, but that probably wouldn't come through me anyway. That's probably going to go through IT. But now your insurance can't say that you can't report it.
Right. Okay. SB 33, this just prohibits governmental entities from using taxpayer funds for any support related to any abortion services. So if you're in a county or an area where you have something that where your contractors are providing any sort of medical services, this might be a clause that you want to put into your terms and conditions. Again, talking to your legal about this. And I apologize, I had to change out my slide and I did not put the slide number on this one. Tim, this is.
Yeah, this is the one. I think I have it in my notes. Give me a second. It's Senate Bill 480.
Yes, Senate Bill 480. It relates to the authority of a local government to enter into an interlocal contract with certain governmental entities to participate in water research or planning activities. It allows them to enter into an agreement with either a local government, the state, or federal government to jointly participate in research or planning services. Didn't get a whole lot of background as to why this was put in, but wanted to make sure that you now have that express authority as a local government to enter into these agreements. I don't know if there was something before where there were some issues with it.
The only thing I see in the notes here was, says questions have recently arisen in at least 2 regions of the state as to whether certain types of local governments have clear legal authority to enter into interlocal agreements. So this just clarifies that, I believe. And then this one is effective immediately as well.
Thank you. Should have put that on there. Okay, so our next one is another one, construction. Senate Bill 687 relating to the liability for land surveying services. So the bill sponsor there had informed the committee that large construction contracts include third-party liability clauses, which are designed to make subcontractors such as land surveyors, architects, and engineers liable for the negligence of third-party workers on the same project. So this is saying we can no longer do that. It also requires that land surveyors have to meet certain professional skill and care standards. So we talk about our specifications and our terms and conditions. This may, depending on what how you address this may impact what those documents look like when you go out to bid or for proposals. (1062) gets into what Tim and I were talking about with the digital newspaper notices. It relates to the type of newspaper required for publication of notices. That says that in lieu of publishing a notice in the newspaper, a governmental entity may publish a notice in a digital newspaper, but they've got some requirements, of course, tacked on to it. I want to see if I put that. I did not. So let me tell you what those are. So you'd be looking at the digital newspaper. One has an audited paid subscription base, has been in business for at least 3 years, employs staff in the jurisdiction of the governmental entity. I'm not sure, it doesn't say anything beyond that. So, could staff be whoever does their website, right? Versus an actual reporter type thing. Reports local events and governmental activities in the jurisdiction of the governmental entity. Provides news of general interest to people in the jurisdiction of the governmental entity. And updates its news at least once a week. So there's a lot of caveats behind this that you want to make sure you're meeting in order to actually adhere to this. So there's 6 things that you have to make sure are happening. This actually went into effect immediately.
It's a small step, but there's still most likely going to be a cost to post in the digital newspaper. They're not going to give anything away for free, but it's a first step to hopefully getting it abolished eventually.
Hopefully. Been trying to do it for 25 years. So
I know.
our fingers crossed. This gets into what we've already talked about. We started with House Bill 1173. And then 3112. Let's see, that permits private meetings on cybersecurity for critical infrastructure. It exempts related cybersecurity information from public disclosure, allows disclosure only when mandated by law or court order. So what this was ensuring that the governmental body is not required to conduct an open meeting to deliberate a cybersecurity measure, policy, or contract solely intended to protect a criminal infrastructure facility located in the jurisdiction. And it accepts certain cybersecurity information from public disclosure. What they didn't want to happen was people come in and they do open records requests, or you're having a discussion in an open meeting and they can use that information against you to do some sort of bad to you or your entity. So that was the intent of this. So that's something you just need to be made aware of if you're doing some sort of a proposal process or bid process. How does this impact, if it does, that process of what goes in the specs, what sort of approval process you have? So you just want to look at how this impacts you in that regard. Tim, do you have any thoughts like how you might handle this in your entity if you were going out for say, one of the pen tests where they determine, if bad actors can get through your network?
Yeah, I don't know that would be advertised to anyone or anything like that, and I'm sure that they would fight to keep that from having to be disclosed. I have not talked to our IT staff yet on this, so
Okay.
I don't know that we have had much issues with this, but I would think some of the bigger entities might have. I'm unaware of anybody that has had to disclose anything though.
Yeah, I don't know as well, but I think you make a really good point that chat with your TS department, your tech services department. Surely they're aware of this, right? But you want to make sure they are, and then say, hey, how does this impact anything that I do on your behalf? How can I support you with this new bill?
Right.
Okay. So House Bill 4219 is about public information request and transparency. So a governmental entity is not required to inform a requester if it does not have responsive information, or if the agency is relying upon a previous attorney general determination to withhold the information. So that lack of communication creates a distrust in government and may leave the requester unsure whether their requested documents exist or if their request was ever received. So you didn't previously have to respond to them. If there was a previous Attorney General determination to withhold the information. What this is saying, and it's requiring us now, that if the entity determines it had no information responsive to public interest request or is relying on a previous determination to withhold the requested information, we still have to notify, or we will have to notify the requester in writing within 10 days after the request. So if we were silent to that before because, hey, the Attorney General said we didn't have to withdraw it, you still have to, or we didn't have to provide it, we now need to, per the statute, we have to let them know, just like we have when we have to do any other response in those 10 days. I believe this is in effect currently.
Let's see. It's effective 9/1.
9/1, thank you.
And what's interesting on this one, it also states that if the entity fails to comply with these requirements, the governmental body's public information officer or their designee must complete open records training within 6 months. So if they don't do this and the Attorney General determines that they didn't do it, they have to go back to school and take a class. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for, I didn't have that part highlighted. Thanks for sharing that, Tim. So, yeah, it's interesting the way some of these get written.
Yeah. Looks like there was a big push on the transparency, public information, open meetings again. You know, they try to push these requirements down onto local government, and you know, there were a lot that went through this time.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one kind of goes a little bit similar to the cybersecurity. This is fraud detection confidentiality. Currently, the ways in which agencies detect fraud are available under an open records request. Therefore, bad actors are able to request from an agency how they detect fraud and potentially use it as a playbook to commit fraud against them. So Senate Bill 765 closes the loophole by excluding fraud detection and deterrence from open records requests. House Bill 150 is establishment of a Texas Cyber Command. It mandates annual cybersecurity training for local officials and employees and denies resource access for entities with untrained personnel. So this is another one that is specific to try to deal with the increase in number and sophistication of cybersecurity attacks. I have a couple of friends that have worked with entities that have had cybersecurity attacks, and some of them have, I mean, it just brought them to their knees for one was 9 months before they could start taking payments from their utility billing again. They had to either get cash or people had to send in checks. So it really did stop them. I'm sure there were other implications, but that was the one in particular that we were discussing. So it's just amazing what happens with these entities when they come in. Hospitals are just paying the ransom. So it's just definitely a problem for governmental entities right now. House Bill 2018.
Quick
This
question,
is,
Diane.
yes, sir.
Did that last one add additional training? Because I see that it requires annual training for all officials and employees. I know we're doing that already, probably through other statutes, but I don't know if this is going to be additional training or if the training that you currently have meets this requirement.
So it's intended to, let me find my notes exactly on that.
It says it requires annual training for all officials and employees of local governmental entities and reporting to TCC. It says access to information resources may be denied if training is not completed. Now it's also affecting a bunch of different statutes and education code that is already there. And this one is effective 9/1. So this is another one you probably need to have that conversation with your IT group or your tech services group so that they are aware of this as well, because there may be new trainings that need to be implemented.
And that's something that they specifically through the bill are requiring this group to DIR to improve the operational capacity of the intelligence center and will execute and enhance the existing. So I think it's a combination of new and
Okay. It'll be
existing
an enhancement.
enhancement.
All right.
But
Now
yeah,
it is
definitely,
taking it away
this is a
from,
good point. Go to your IT folks and talk to them as well.
and it is taking it away from DIR and creating that Texas Cyber Command. So they will now be responsible for that. So, there might be new points of contacts as well.
Yeah. Okay. So House Bill 2818 adds a new division at DIR. It adds an artificial intelligence division. It seeks to assist agencies in the modernization of legacy systems and the completion of other projects in a more efficient manner by establishing the division within DIR to oversee and support the use of artificial intelligence technologies in state projects. So this hits the state, but I think it's important, and the reason I included it is to understand that there's still a resource. This is happening at the state level. Oftentimes what happens at it's just for the state in this session will hit local governments in the following sessions. So I think it's important to know that this is happening, especially there are contracts, as I said, TechShare has contracts, DIR has contracts. We want to make sure that we are leveraging AI and making sure that AI isn't used against us. So this is just one of those more situational awareness type bills that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. You want to take this one on 3512?
Sure. Let's see, this one's relating to artificial intelligence training programs for certain employees and officials of state and local governments. Artificial intelligence training would, among other things, provide that the local government employees and elected and appointed officials who have access to a local government computer system to perform at least 25% of their duties must complete a certified artificial intelligence AI program. So they're going to want staff and elected or appointed officials that have anything to do with the artificial intelligence and have access to the computer systems or the database. They have to do this training. DIR is supposed to, as part of this, in consultation with the Cybersecurity Council, annually certify at least 5 AI training programs for state and local government employees and update standards for maintenance of certification by the AI training programs. And as in your, with your last little section here, Diane, it says for grant eligibility, to apply for a criminal justice related state grant, a local government must submit with the grant application a written certification of the local government's compliance with the certified AI training. And that one goes into effect on 9/1. So again, this is another get with your IT group to make sure they are aware of this. And if you have a grant manager, they probably need to be aware of this one as well.
Right. If you have grant policies and procedures in your as part of your procurement policies and procedures, you might want to make sure this is addressed depending on how you write those those grant sections in your documentation and procurement. I know we had some pretty specific stuff when I was working, so this would be something I would have to go back and update. So it's important to take a look at that, and if you need to update your own documentation as well. And then the last one we have for this morning is Senate Bill 1964, AI Ethics and Government Use. It requires, it requires several things, but the main is a code of ethics and disclosure by vendors. The bill sponsor informed the committee that AI with rapid evolvement rather in state and local governments increasingly relying on automated tools to deliver services and optimize processes. We've already talked about that increase, that their concern was the existing state law does not sufficiently address the complex issues of transparency and accountability and the protection of individual rights when it comes to AI. So this bill seeks to address it by creating a clear and enforceable framework for procurement, development, and deployment of AI systems by governmental agencies in Texas. So this is something you'll have to take a look at, see what does this do to your documents that your vendors have to agree to, sign, become part of your bid documents. And it amends certain sections of Government Code 2054. Tim, have you looked at this and how you're going to implement this yet?
I haven't looked at it deeply yet, but I did have a note here on my end that I'm going to need to update my documents. So I'm probably going to have to get with legal to see what's going to be required. Because I didn't put anything else in my note other than update documents. So I'm going to have to do some digging on that. And this one is effective 9/1 as well. So, we don't have a lot of time to react to, what's been changed. So,
yeah. Okay. So that's something that this is one that y'all will definitely want to take a look at. And again, I sound like a broken record, but talk with your legal department, see how you typically handle these things. Is it just a requirement that you can put in your terms and conditions? Is everybody comfortable with that? Or do you need to update your forms? Along with some of the other requirements that we have of our vendors.
Yeah. Is it going to be a checkbox or is it just as easy as putting it in your terms and conditions?
And that's where you look at what your current practices are, take a deeper look at the Government Code 2054 and the bill itself and work with your legal department. But this will definitely require some sort of a change on the procurement side. And it's specifically stated in here, framework for the procurement development and deployment. So we definitely have to take a look at that. And that's everything that we have today. Let me do a stop share and say hello to everybody one more time. It's me again. Any questions? Anything that you've heard about that maybe we didn't touch? I think, Tim, did you have anything once we take their questions about the current sessions that you want to hit?
On the current session, no. I've kind of got some updates on the second special session, that I can go through. But, up to you what you think we want to include, or, if there's any questions, then.
When are you doing another session for the special sessions that have been in place? You have something coming up in September?
Yeah. Let's see, Jennifer from Denton County and myself are doing a Texpa one on September 18th, which we're kind of going to go over the same sort of thing that we just did, but we're also going to have a focus on anything that is passed in the second session now. So it'll be a kind of a latest up to date kind of one if there's anything going on. So
great. So I encourage y'all to watch that and what's happening there, so that if there's any other changes, you'll be made aware in a timely manner. So that's great. And I think some of the other associations have got some other opportunities to get some updates, get a little bit deeper dive than what we were able to do today. They might have some legal reps there that can give you a better idea from the legal standpoint, because Tim and I can't do that for you. So definitely look at those resources and attend those as well. I highly recommend that. Any questions from y'all? anything we can answer while you have the two of us here? Not seeing any hands. Feel free to unmute if you want to jump in. I'm not seeing anybody in chat either.
I did not see the proclamation from the governor for the second session, so I don't know how many items he had on there. I got to go find that yet. But I pulled this morning. So as of today, in the second session alone, all right, because everything previously now is dead. It can't be considered. It has to be refiled. So anything that didn't make it out of the first session now has to be refiled. And currently the House, as of today, has filed 391 bills, and the Senate has filed 70. Now, one of the ones that did pass the Senate in the second session was that Senate Bill 13, which related to the use of use by a political subdivision of public funds for the lobbying activities. So they've got that one back on there, and it's already passed the Senate. I don't believe the House has discussed it yet, but they had 4 or 5 bills in the first session. I didn't have time to highlight that from my report this morning, but I know that there's some from a previous one that I did on the second session. There were at least 5 that referred to that. So there's a bunch of bills out there. Everybody's trying to get a bill out there. So, they're pushing for it. Hopefully it doesn't happen, because it's very beneficial for us because we do not have the time. One of the senators that spoke against the bill talked about how our elected officials, our appointed officials, our professional staff are not able to just get up and go down to Austin and present or give testimony on all these bills that they put through. And there's a lot that you have to depend on the experts to provide that information on your behalf. That he had referenced that your elected officials and your appointed probably are unpaid volunteers who have full-time jobs anyway, that can't just pack up, head down to Austin, and have to wait all day long to maybe be able to testify. And I'm sure that most of us know that when the bill last session for the taking up to 100,000, they had a meeting in committee. It was supposed to be one of the first items considered. It wasn't considered until 11 o'clock that night. So if you've got an elected official that's not being paid trying to go to testify, he's missing a full day of his regular job and not able to do anything else related to what he's been elected for, and now they're going to take that assistance away, or trying to take that assistance away, and that one has passed the Senate.
All right. Thank you, Tim. He's right on top of everything for y'all. Appreciate that. Okay, if there's no other questions, we're going to let you guys get on with your Friday. We certainly appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. If you do have any questions, you can reach out through the techshare.org site at the procurement helpline. Put your questions in, those come directly to me. I'll take a look at them. I reach out to my resources and my folks, and then we'll get you an answer. So again, have a wonderful weekend and hope to see y'all soon. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diane.